Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I know that I'm up against models talking about dog rescue, so I appreciate you coming to mine. I know that's not always an easy one. Thank you. It really is an honor to be here and part of Glasgow Vegfest. Glasgow, I was told. I was already corrected once. And to be here and talk about this topic. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, thank you. I hear a lot of other stuff, so I'm glad you can hear me. As an ethical vegan of almost 20 years, this topic is really important to me, veganism generally, and then sports nutrition specifically. And I often get asked, what came first? And it was actually becoming vegan as a teenager and having no idea what to study in school and being like, well, nutrition would be really useful. And so I decided to study nutrition, knowing nothing about what a registered dietitian was, or that I would study it for 7 years and end up with 2 nutrition degrees. But what I do now is use this knowledge that I've been able to acquire. It's been a privilege to study this to help people who are vegan, who want to be vegan, to apply this in a positive way. We hear a lot of stuff about veganism and a lot of myths, and I feel like my job, not just today, but generally, is to cover a lot of this, and so that you leave here with some confidence about making good decisions around nutrition in general and sports nutrition specifically. I have another talk tomorrow that is about how we don't need to eat exotic foods to be healthy and to be vegan. And in the US, this is a little bit of a contentious issue because there's a lot of raw food folks. There are folks who think you have to eliminate grain or you have to ferment foods. And I feel like the evidence doesn't support that. And so that's what tomorrow's talk will be about. But today, sports nutrition. I like to start with this. This is from the position paper of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the professional organization of dietitians. And they are not a progressive group by any means. They are not a vegan group. They are not even a plant-based group. And they have this very strong statement. Every 5 years, they look at the research on vegetarianism and veganism and put together a position paper. And that position paper is very strong. It's available online. There's actually a new one coming out very soon. And it's something that I refer to often because it does say that vegetarian and vegan diets are not only appropriate, but they could have benefits for the entire life cycle. And so that includes pregnancy, that includes young children, and that includes athletes as well. And then we have some less scientific, evidence-based promotion here. This is from 1893, beef or oats, which is better, right? 1 pound of Quaker oats will make as much bone and muscle as 3 pounds of beef. Pretty cool advertisement from over 100 years ago, right? Looking at this, right? I wouldn't mind seeing this today, right? Maybe in 2016, Quaker oats will do the same thing. And when I talk about this, I like to say that there's a lot of research on vegetarians and vegans. Paleo doesn't have that. Atkins doesn't have that. All sorts of other dietary patterns have not had the amount of research as vegetarians mostly, and then increasingly vegans have had. Decades. Adventist Health Study. How many people have heard of the Adventist Health Study? Okay, a few people. So there was the first one that took part a couple decades ago, and if you've ever heard that vegetarians or vegans live longer, that comes from research from the Adventist Health Study. They followed tens of thousands of people, looked at what they ate, and then what diseases they got, and what diseases developed, and at what age they died. And then they found that vegetarians indeed live longer. And right now, there's Adventist Health Study 2, which is a cohort of 100,000 people. It's a humongous study. And as you can see, about half of them are vegetarian, and about 10% of them are vegan. And I think that this 10% number is really important because the first Adventist Health Study, only about 3% were vegan. So that's a 300% increase in this Adventist community. If you're not familiar with Adventist, it's a sect of Christianity that interprets the Bible in a way that they believe people should be vegetarian. And also a big emphasis on health. and a lot of Adventists become doctors and nurses and dietitians. And I myself, I'm not an Adventist, but went to an Adventist grad school that focuses on vegetarian nutrition. And so it's very cool that they've been doing this for a long time. In this cohort, it's one of the first times they've had groups of people over 90 years old to follow and see what they're eating and what their health outcomes are. So it's amazing how much research there is on this. And some other speakers are talking about this while we're here at Scotland Vegfest. Another one, more local. How many people have heard of this? The Oxford EPIC study. Wow, just a few people. So this is out of England, and they purposely recruited vegetarians the same way, to have this cohort to follow, to see what people are eating and what diseases develop. And so we have some positive health outcomes with this. And I know this is supposed to be about sports nutrition, but I wanted to give you a little bit first off. Lower BMI. Vegetarians and vegans tend to weigh less, have a lower body mass index, lower rates of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and some cancers. This is incredible that we have this research and we have these numbers. It makes my job easier, right? As an ethical vegan who's also a dietitian, I wear two hats. You know, and sometimes I get accused of, oh, you're just telling people things because you want them to be vegan. And that's not the case. I mean, it's fortunate that we have this evidence that not only do we know that plants are good for you, but that the people who are eating them have these better rates of disease here. And so we have possible mechanisms, right? When you look at research and someone tells you that there were certain results, you want to say, well, what are the possible mechanisms? Well, we've been looking at this for decades, right? More fiber, more phytochemicals, less saturated fat, because of these foods here that vegetarians eat. Hi. So sports nutrition. How many people have heard of Scott Jurek? So a lot of people. Scott Jurek won the Badwater Ultra Marathon in 2006. That is a 135-mile running race through Death Valley. Okay, a running race. Some people say, oh, biking? No, this is the equivalent of 5 marathons through Death Valley in the summer. And Scott Jurek won. And I was here for this when this photo was taken, and he then credited his vegan diet. And I went, here I am, a vegan, an athlete, and a dietitian, and thought, wow, maybe this is a thing. Maybe athletes are doing this. And it turns out that it has been. You know, I've been using this photo for probably 5 years now, and here we are almost 10 years on. And I think that this moment has really inspired a lot of folks. Scott has gone on to write an excellent book called Eat and Run, and then he's also influenced some of these other folks. And so now we've seen this change. It used to be that vegans would be out to prove that they can run a marathon without dying of protein deficiency, right? That's where we were about 10 years ago. And then now we've seen this switch of people saying, no, there's actually benefits to eating plant-based or vegan. And we've seen this a little bit with Rip Esselstyn and Engine 2, Rich Roll, the ultramarathon man, and then Scott Jurek, who we mentioned previously. And it's gone beyond that, from endurance athletes to actual bodybuilders and ultra athletes, and even mixed martial artists. And I have this up here to remind me to tell a story about how I was at a mountain bike race in San Diego, California. And it was a 100-mile mountain bike race. I raced in the single speed category, and I got done, and I hate this part of a race because I don't want to be a pain in the butt. And I had been eating bananas all day, bananas and oranges for 100 miles. And then I say, you know, what's the food? Is there food? And they said, oh, head right over there. Here's your ticket. And I look over, and it's Big Red's Barbecue. And so it's a giant pickup truck, right, with a smoker attached to the back. And I go over there, and I say, what do you have? And he says, pulled pork or potato salad. So, right, what are my options? I order barbecue sauce on a hamburger bun, just because I wanted to eat something. And I hear someone say, are you a vegetarian? And I look over, and it's a big guy with a beard and a belly. Clearly, this is Big Red. And I say, yes. And I think he's just messing with me. And he says, we have tofu in the smoker if you want it. And I didn't believe him. And he sees this on my face, and he says, no, and we have portobello mushroom sandwiches. Do you want one of each? And I said, okay. And he sends one of the kids to get it, and he comes back with these 2 vegan sandwiches. And my mind is totally blown. Keep in mind, I'm dehydrated. I just raced 100 miles. And I eat them both, and I feel a little better. And I look at him and say, why do you have this? And he says, well, most of what I do is with mixed martial artists, and so many of them are vegan, I had to come up with something. And that blew my mind. That blew my mind. And that was just a couple years ago now. And I really think that if, guys who beat each other up in cages, right, for a living are becoming more and more vegan, that really says something, right? Here's an example. Wow, this does not look that good on this screen. But this is my friend Jahina Malik. She's been vegan since birth. She's a bodybuilder. Just like to have an example of someone clearly getting their protein. And sports nutrition here. So my goal is for you to leave here with practical information that you can apply in your life, or at least in Facebook arguments. One of the most important issues that I see, believe it or not, is total calories. That people who come to me and want to work with me as a client, I look at their diet record and they're just simply not eating enough food. Because if you remember earlier, we talked about the benefits of eating plant-based is lower body mass index. Vegetarians and vegans tend to weigh less. They tend to lose weight when they make the transition. But if you're an athlete who needs 5,000 calories, and this is new to you, it can actually be difficult. I have guys calling me and saying, how much salad do I have to eat? And I say, okay, let's add some other more calorically dense foods, because it's very important, right? Calories are what fuel the workouts. Deficiency, you actually lose muscle if you're not eating enough calories. Sources, sort of nutrition 101 here, carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Those are your only sources of calories. They always have calories, whether it's broccoli or olive oil or candy. And then here's a recommendation. Chris Carmichael was Lance Armstrong's coach, which I should probably change this. But nonetheless, this is his recommendation for the percentage that you should get of calories. And you can see here, it's mostly carbohydrate, then some fat, because fat is very calorically dense, and then only 13% of your calories from protein. That's not a very high number. He's an omnivore, and his book is about nutrition performance. And he says 13% of your calories from protein, which is very low. And so we'll talk about protein. Don't worry, we will talk about protein. So carbohydrate is the main source, is the recommended source of fuel, right? It's what burns best for us. It's what we want to be eating. And so the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and their specifically sports dietitian group, says we should get 45 to 65% of calories from carbohydrate. The American College of Sports Medicine, which again is kind of the go-to for research and numbers of this, says 6 to 10 grams per kilogram body weight. Hey, and for once, I don't have to talk about the conversion. So this is great. Which these numbers end up looking similar to this when you do the math on body weight. And then here, even paleo for athletes, right? This is from the paleo book by their guru, whose name I can never remember. He says endurance athletes should get 45 to 55% of their calories from carbohydrate. So you can see that there's overlap here. These numbers aren't that different. Using carbohydrate for fuel is a normal recommendation, and it's one that vegan sports nutrition can easily fit into. So protein. There's probably some funny t-shirts about protein here right now. So what does protein do? Regulation, growth of cells, organs, and muscles. Every single cell requires protein. The requirements are about 0.8 to 1.7 per kilogram body weight, or again, as a percentage of calories, between 10 and 25%. And as we'll see in a little bit, this really isn't that much. Deficiency, muscle mass loss, fatigue, and again, that sports nutrition group just says meet your need for protein and essential amino acids just by eating a variety of plant foods. And at the end, when I talk about application, this is a very key word here, is variety, and eating a variety of foods. So even more, and these are your talking points for your Facebook arguments, plant foods contain all of the essential amino acids. Okay, I'm not talking about oil, but whole plant foods. They contain all of the essential amino acids. I see this often in vegan propaganda or information. Them saying, oh, make sure that you eat a variety of food because not all foods have all the essential amino acids. That's not true. All foods do, and I have a chart coming up to show you more about that. You don't need to combine protein. We hear this over and over. I think maybe my professional life goal is to destroy the myth that you need to combine proteins. We've known this for, I think, over 30 years, that it's unnecessary. So even us as advocates of a vegan diet need to think about how we talk about this. And let's not tell people they have to combine proteins, because you simply don't. I think the term incomplete protein is misleading, right? Because if plant foods are incomplete, then animal foods are complete proteins. And I think that's too close to ideal and not ideal, right? And the language used around this really affects how we think about nutrition. So I don't think we should use this term incomplete protein at all. And so where do you get your protein? Legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, and more. Even fruit has essential amino acids in it. So spinach is 30% protein by calories. Again, don't leave here and say, yeah, the dietitian said to eat spinach for protein, right? Spinach is very low in calories, but of those calories, 30% is protein. So 1 cup has 5 grams. That's significant. So I wrote a protein primer on nomeatathlete.com. Matt Fraser is a good friend of mine. I was a co-author for the book, and you can see this online in more detail, and it's a great link to send to people who are concerned about protein, right? Sometimes someone does Meatless Monday, and now they're concerned that they're going to die of protein deficiency, right? And you can send them this link here. Now, this chart, which one doesn't fit, and 2 is a little complicated, but bear with me here. I think this is important. So you have some examples of foods, and these are black beans, garbanzos, kidney beans, and this first column is the amount of protein in the serving, right? So this is in grams, all right? And this is the number of servings you would need to eat to meet the recommended daily allowance, which is the US recommendations. Now, what you have across here are the essential amino acids, okay? And those numbers are in milligrams, and you don't have to memorize this. And these are the amounts of servings you would need to eat to meet the recommendations. My point of this entire chart is that none of these numbers are 0, right? That the essential amino acids, which are listed here, are available in all of these foods. And I know what you're saying or thinking is that, oh, but those are beans. Well, if we look at vegetables, it's similar. That these vegetables also have the essential amino acids. And I hope that this gives you some confidence in what you're eating and that you are indeed getting enough protein. We can look at some of these here. So this is a baked potato, which is what I enjoyed right when I got off the plane here at the baked potato shop. You can see that there is all the essential amino acids. Broccoli, this is carrot. Now, I wouldn't recommend carrot here, right? You have to eat quite a lot of servings to get your protein for the day. But I wouldn't recommend you do that. And fortunately, we have more than carrots to eat. Does this make sense? Is this helpful? Because I just added these couple slides, and I know you look at this and just see a ton of numbers, but I really want to hammer this point that you can get the essential amino acids from a variety of food. And then maybe a more interesting photo here is my friend Tori, a vegan of 20 years, and a very established bodybuilder here, clearly getting enough protein. And then, because I do a lot of talks with non-vegans and with health professionals, and I feel it's important to include actual food and say, look, this is what a vegan could eat. And this is from a 24-hour vegetarian cafe in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And so you can see they have some homemade vegan sausage, tofu scramble, some veggies, some whole wheat pancakes made with soy milk. I didn't do the calculation, but there's probably a lot of protein in this. So the next nutrient I want to talk about quickly is iron. The iron needs of athletes and plant-based eaters are increased. And if you're female, they're also increased for you. So that's 3 ways you need to eat more protein. That is absolutely true, as is that non-heme, which is the iron that's found in plants, is less well absorbed. This is true. So you have to let that go if you've argued otherwise. But vitamin C increases absorption up to 5 times. So what that means is if you're eating a high iron meal, you need to include foods that also contain vitamin C. And fortunately, we do this. Unless you're opening up a can of beans and eating it with a spoon straight from the can, you're probably adding something. And if we look at, I was looking at the folks selling falafel. What else do they have? Lots of tomatoes, right? And things with lemon juice in it. And these combinations sort of have happened throughout the world because even without the research, people have figured this out, that if you combine these foods, you can increase the iron. Because iron is all about absorption. It's not about the total amount that you eat. Some people say, oh, I need 18 milligrams a day. Cool, this supplement has it. Pop a pill and think I'm good. And it doesn't work that way. Iron is all about absorption. Vegans may have higher iron intake than vegetarians, which I think is an interesting fact because it seems that the more you eliminate animal products, the more concerned those around you get about nutrition. And this is one case where giving up eggs and dairy can actually increase your iron consumption and your iron absorption, because the calcium in dairy products can interfere with this absorption, and eggs and dairy have very, very low amounts of iron. So if you're replacing your calories from eggs and dairy with something vegan, even if it was corn chips, you're getting more iron than 0. And so we have the data that has kind of shown this. Eating a variety of iron sources increases absorption. It's another benefit of plant-based eating. You're getting a little bit of iron throughout the day. And guess what helps with absorption? Eating a little bit of iron throughout the day. So these things are happening naturally. Here's a chart from the Vegetarian Resource Group, which is an excellent resource. They have all sorts of charts like this and articles. Their nutrition advisor is Dr. Reed Mangels, who's kind of the expert. She's on the forefront of all of this. She's been doing vegan nutrition stuff for about 30 years, and she's someone that I look to. I think I have that in my last slide on resources, but just showing the amount of iron that's available in a variety of foods. So sample meal here. Whole wheat pasta with broccoli, olive oil, and tomato sauce. I know olive oil, I don't know if that's reached here, but in the US right now, within vegan nutrition, oil is a very contentious issue. There are a lot of folks who have been influenced by Dr. Esselstyn, who has done some great work in reversing heart disease, and he advocates a no-oil diet. And so some people enter into veganism via Dr. Esselstyn and look at things and say, nope, this shouldn't have oil in it. And I know it can be controversial, but as a sample meal here, I think it is helpful because growing up in an Italian-American family, everything was cooked in olive oil. And I think it makes vegetables more palatable to use them. Because I come from a public health standpoint. I want people to eat more vegetables. And if using a little bit of oil increases vegetable consumption, I think that that's a good thing. So the sample meal here calculated out 67% carbohydrate, 20% fat, and 13% protein. And you're looking at 32 grams of protein for under 800 calories. Now, if you'll notice, there's no, quote, protein food in this. Right? This is just the pasta, the broccoli, olive oil, and tomato sauce. And yet we're hitting 13% protein, which is what Chris Carmichael had recommended. And getting 32 grams, which is excellent. And 22 grams of fiber is twice the amount of fiber that your average American gets an entire day. And you're getting this in one meal. And then we could simply add, here's some other nutrients. You can see that iron, almost half your day's iron just from this one meal. If you added half a cup of lentils, you can boost that number up to 41 grams, and then look how that changes the percentage. Quickly, you're up to 15% of your calories from protein from this one meal. And this is only half a cup of lentils. That's a couple forkfuls. And I know maybe you're not eating lentils with pasta, and maybe that's weird, but lentil soup is super easy because unlike other beans, they don't need to be soaked. And then it's something that you can just have on hand. And then the reason I put this here is because I love to cook, but I can also be lazy. So I'll just keep lentils in the fridge and add them to everything. They're cheap, they're healthy, they're easy to cook, they don't taste like much. So to add a half a cup of lentils in with this tomato sauce and pasta is just something easy to do, right? This is the sort of nutrition that I advocate, as opposed to like eating a Cliff Bar. You could just add this to your meal. More photos of food. Can you see this? Can you kind of see this? So this, I did not eat all of this, but this is food that I brought on a 24-hour mountain bike race. And you can see I try to do some whole foods, right? I have the bananas and apples that are in there, and there's some dates down here. But you kind of get tired of eating on these really long events. I mean, 24 hours is a long time to mountain bike. And there's only so much whole food that you can eat. So you kind of need to supplement with some other types of foods, like Ritz crackers or graham crackers, or just things that you need for fuel. And this is an important consideration because it goes back to the first issue I brought up in sports nutrition, which is just simply eating enough calories. And if you're eating a plant-based diet and you're active, and you may have made whole grains and vegetables and fruits part of your daily routine, eating some of these crackers when you're racing is not going to affect your health. And that's important, and that's sort of more of what I'll be talking about tomorrow. And I do have some packaged stuff in here too, and some bars and whatnot. Because at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're like, no, I don't want to eat that. No, I don't want to eat that. Give me something I want to eat, because that's what's most important, is just actual eating. So non-nutrients in plant food, by definition, a nutrient is something we have to have or we'll develop a deficiency and die eventually. But non-nutrient parts of food here, these phytochemicals and antioxidants, they're not required, but they are very, very important. When we look at the benefits of eating plants, it's because of these compounds. They reduce inflammatory markers. And for athletes, it's a similar function as it is in prevention of cardiovascular disease. These antioxidants that help lower cholesterol levels and protect your endothelium also help your body repair after a hard workout. So that's why something like smoothies is so common, because you can just throw a ton of fruit in there and get these antioxidants. And what you hear about quite often from athletes who have switched to veganism is that they recover faster. And that's huge, because if you can recover quicker, you can work out more, which would then give you an advantage. And an example of a non-nutrient compound is this nitric oxide. How many folks here have heard this, that beets are helpful for athletes? Okay, so some people. There was some credible research that showed that beets increase oxygen flow to muscle. And so it extended time to exhaustion. So again, if you're a runner, and you can do an extra sprint or an extra something, that is going to help your overall training. And they found that beets actually did that, extended the time to exhaustion. It's also found in cacao and in other plant foods. But this is an example of the benefits of plants with actual research to show it. Oh, and then here I got ahead of myself. So increases vasodilation and oxygen flow to the muscles. Increased time to exhaustion. This is actually a similar mechanism to EPO, which is it's been the drug of choice for cyclists, right? Very similar mechanism, but from beets. And so the future of nutrition really is plants. And I'm not saying this as an advocate of plant-based diets, but as a nutrition professional, this is where we're going. Right? Scurvy is pretty well figured out, right? We can get everyone vitamin C. It's this. It's like, what do these 25,000 different phytochemicals do? And as we start to research them, we can see the benefits and the benefits that it has in our longevity. And maybe some of these carotenoids in carrots, lycopene in tomatoes, which a lot of people know about thanks to the ketchup industry. Isoflavones in soybeans are very important, and we have a lot of research for this. And then the flavonoids in cacao, which is the bean that chocolate's made from. So creating actual plant-based meals, I like this philosophy here for athletes and otherwise: grains, vegetables, legumes, and nuts and seeds. And think about this, right? You have your pasta and maybe your beans and your tomato sauce and then broccoli and zucchini on it. Or maybe you have a stir fry with brown rice noodles and bok choy and tofu. It's this way of eating that I think is very simple and also a way to get the nutrition that you need. The emphasis should be on whole foods first and foremost. But I think that these fake meat or vegan meat or faux meat and cheese, whatever you want to call them, they can be complements. Some research just came out about hip fractures, and they found that legumes and beans were protective, but also vegetarian meat products were protective as well for hip fractures. Interesting, right? And when we talk about those Adventists and the 100,000 of them that we're following, they are big advocates of eating these fake meat products. If you go to Loma Linda, California, in the grocery store, there's a whole aisle of fake meats in a can. It's quite fascinating. And these are what the people who live the longest in the world are eating. So again, I know vegans who their entire diet is this. That's not what I'm saying. But that you can include it. Variety, very important. Fruit and salad can be meals for the athletes that I've worked with that just needed more calories. They say, I'll have an apple for a snack. It's like, well, can you have 3 apples as a snack? Just eating more of these things that we grew up thinking of as only sides or only small amounts, that you can eat a gigantic salad. I had a raw vegan friend. We did an Ironman race in Northern California near my cousin's house. And so the next day we woke up and we were making some food, and my cousin had invited some people over. And my friend Brian is making this salad. And my cousin comes over and says, there's only 8 of us. That's a lot of salad. And he says, oh no, this is just for me. Because he was making such a gigantic salad because it was his meal. That was his big meal for the day, was a salad. And then discretionary calories, if you're physically active, you might just need to eat more. And there's only so much brown rice and broccoli you can eat in a day. So you do have some leg room here to be able to add other foods, a lot of which we see here, right? So the benefits of plants for athletes, they have a great carbohydrate to protein ratio already. The plant foods we're eating are mostly carbohydrate with a little protein. Fruits and vegetables are hydrating. You can say, iceberg lettuce, it's mostly water. Yes, that's a great thing. And the part that's not water is nutrients. So why not, right? And other fruits and vegetables are similar. Antioxidants that aid in recovery are very important. Healthy fats for increased caloric needs. Should vegan diets be high fat or low fat or somewhere in the middle? We're not quite sure. We're really not sure. And so I take kind of a middle of the road and say, healthy fats can definitely help athletes, and it can also make food more palatable. I love just covering things in peanut sauce, right? It's easy, it's tasty, it's cheap, and it's something I recommend to a lot of athletes who just simply need to eat more. Plants are easy to eat, and many athletes are eating plant foods most of the time. Right? If you go to a race, what are they eating, right? If people are doing long-distance hikes, what are they bringing with them? A lot of plant foods, nuts and seeds and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And these are vegan foods, right? We don't think of them that way, but they really are. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about here is the series I have called Strongest Hearts. It's a video series where I work with a professional filmmaker, and we do these very short documentary-style videos with vegan athletes. They're 5 to 20 minutes, and we show how athletes eat and cook and train. And we make these for you to share with your omnivore friends. Right? They're not like, if you go vegan, you'll run as fast as Scott Jurek, right? Or you'll be as strong as Patrick out there, right? We don't make those kind of claims. We just say, here are these vegans, and here's what they're doing. And we've been really fortunate to work with some really exceptional athletes someone training for the Olympics in modern day pentathlon. We worked with a professional cyclist. We followed a guy running his first 100-mile race. And we went to the race and we filmed him in the middle of the night, and I ended up pacing him. It was just a really fun event that we were able to capture. And we offer some tips and nutrition lessons, and all our episodes are available at strongesthearts.org. I have some stickers up here, not that many, but I'd love to give you some. Here's a screenshot. Man, these photos, I'm sorry about the quality here, but this is just a screenshot of an episode we did with vegan track cyclists. One of which is a U.S. national champion in track cycling and a vegan. And so we interview them and we show them training, and then they talk about this. This is our friend Jack here, who can deadlift something like 600 pounds, which is insane, and a longtime vegan now. Lastly, as a resource here, I work with a group of vegetarian dietitians, and we make these resources on different topics in plant-based nutrition. And on the next slide, I have the website where to get them, and this is just an example of them. This is the one for sports nutrition written by a researcher. She's a PhD RD. This is what she studies. This is what she looks at. So we hired her to write these handouts. And we have them at different levels. There's ones for health professionals. So if your doctor says, no, I don't think you can be vegan, you need to check out this paleo thing, you can print this out and bring it to him or her. And then we have ones written at a level for your average person that, okay, you want to know about sports nutrition, then we have this. You want to know about iron, you want to know about calcium and plant-based diets, we have these handouts that are science-based. And so lastly here, the woman from the previous slide who wrote that handout has an excellent book called Vegetarian Sports Nutrition. It's on an academic press, so it's a little harder to get. It's a little more expensive than it should be, but it really is an excellent book. It's really my cheat sheet when I get tough questions. I turn to this book, and it's very readable. There's a research article that was published about fueling the vegetarian athlete. It's really about vegans. And then some of my favorite books here, Vegan for Life and Plant Powered Diet by these dietitians. And then vegetariannutrition.net is where you can get those handouts. They're all free, they're easily available, they're listed by topic. And then veganhealth.org. How many people know this website? Okay, a few of you. This is by Jack Norris, who's a colleague of mine, who is phenomenal at keeping up to date with research. You can search any topic within vegan nutrition, and he will tell you what the current research says, what you need to think about, what you need to look at, all on this website, all for free, all really well organized. So it's definitely the site that if someone says, something about B12, you can search his B12 page and it's excellent. Someone tells you, oh, you have to eat fish to get vitamin D. You can see what Jack says about vitamin D and get all the information. So this is really a great resource that I recommend. Yeah, and I'll leave this up for a moment while people do this. And then, yeah, this is my last slide, and here's my contact information. If you had questions about any of this, you can send me an email. That's my website, and then all my social media stuff is just creatively my name. So I think we have a few minutes for questions here. I thank you all for coming and listening attentively. It's a real honor to be here and speak with you about this. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, you might need to yell. Oh man, I can't hear you at all. How did they do it in other sessions?
Thanks for the talk, by the way. It's really good, eye-opening. I'm a personal trainer, and I heard you talking about endurance athletes and like the carbohydrate, protein, and fat breakdown. Would that be the same, but just a bit more for like someone who wanted to increase body, muscle mass and stuff?
Yeah, thank you. The question about being a personal trainer. So if you're in the gym and you're lifting weights, a bodybuilder would be an extreme example of that. You don't need quite as many calories, and so your protein needs do go up. That percentage does go up. And so on the earlier slide, I gave the I gave that recommendation. Let's see if I can find the slide here. For protein, you would want it to be in this top end here, so this 1.7, grams per kilogram body weight, and then calculate that out to what it would look like. So, this lower end is for endurance athletes, because if you're burning calories, you're eating more calories, you're getting more protein just naturally. You really don't need to make any adjustments. But if you are a bodybuilder or a power lifter, then yeah, you want to adjust it to this higher number. So yeah, good question. Somebody else? Yes.
Hello, I practice martial arts and I'm going to get a knee reconstruction very soon. I'm a vegan for over 20 years. Can you recommend any foods for recovery?
Great. The question was about foods for recovery. The going number is 4 to 1, 3 or 4 to 1 carbohydrate to protein. And so mostly carbohydrate with a little protein is kind of the way that I like to talk about that. And timing is very important. You want to do it within 45 minutes. After a hard workout, you really want to eat something within 45 minutes. And that's more for the carbohydrate than it is the protein. You want to increase your glycogen storage, if you've heard that term, and that'll help prepare you for your next workout. It's very important. And then what foods would be good for that? I like just a little bit of peanut butter on one piece of bread, maybe with banana or, diced apple or something. Or at that point, really, it's anything that you can get your hands on, that's somewhat healthy would be a good option. Smoothies work for people, too. All right, another question. I will try and... All right, I'm going to pass this back, and you guys to work with me here.
Hi, my question's following on from the guy in front who's a personal trainer. I'm kind of on a journey where I'm trying to lose fat and build muscle. So my calorie requirements are relatively restricted, but because I'm lifting a lot, I'm doing it by lifting a lot of weights. My protein needs are relatively high, and I'm finding as a vegan, without relying on, I struggle without relying on like protein shakes, tofu, and other kind of soy-based things, that a lot of other kind of vegan protein sources also have a lot of calories in, like, kind of beans and things like that. Is there anything that you can recommend other than just, drinking hundreds of protein shakes and things like that?
So the question about getting more protein when you're consuming fewer calories, you could think about switching, like if you're having rice and beans, for example, more of the beans, less of the rice, is something to do. And then there are some burgers that are bean-based, and adding something like that, and I don't think soy is a problem, but it is important to eat a variety of foods and not be reliant on it. And so it's finding some more of those whole foods meat alternatives and adding more of those. And then some of the protein powder, I say most people don't need to do it, but it is convenient, especially if you're reducing calories, to have that and add that. And you can find non-soy ones pretty easily.
It was really interesting, Matt. Thanks. So you were talking about how certain things, for example, vitamin C, help absorption of some nutrients. But I seem to remember other things are bad for absorption of other nutrients. Can you say something about that?
So Morgan is a very good friend of mine. We lived together for many years in Los Angeles, and he came up from London to hear me talk and hang out. And I was expecting not such a serious question. So you've kind of thrown me off by asking a real question. It was about absorption and interference. And yeah, it's with iron. Some examples are tea and coffee interfere with iron absorption. Calcium interferes with iron absorption. And then does that answer your question? Or are you thinking about something else? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of off the top of my head right now. And then you have like other things that benefit absorption. Using a cast iron skillet, right? You actually get some of that iron in the food, especially if you're cooking something with vitamin C. So if you did stir-fry vegetables and then you add tomatoes, or you add your tomato sauce and then the pasta in the cast iron skillet while it's hot, you actually get some of that iron in the food, which is a benefit, I think. And it's totally safe. It's the same iron that we need. So, yeah.
Hey, thanks for the talk again. And my question is, how do you feel about incorporating intermittent fasting into a vegan diet for purposes of weight loss and its influence on performance?
Yeah, the question was about intermittent fasting, which is pretty popular right now. I don't know enough. I haven't read enough of actual research to see how well it works. I would add that I could speculate that it's at least interesting, and it is something worth looking at. So people might only eat once a day, a couple times, and then go back to normal, or just not eat an entire day. And that definitely does change our system, and does that lead to weight loss? I'm not sure. I haven't seen enough to really have a strong opinion about it, which is kind of a cop-out answer, but that's as much as I know about it. So good question, though. It's something I want to follow for sure. And same with the really high-fat diets and people looking at those for athletic performance. There's a popular ultra runner who's an advocate of a very high-fat diet, and I haven't seen a lot of evidence around it, but it's working for him, so that's something else to keep your eye on for sure. Do I have time to keep doing questions? 3:46? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think so. Go ahead. Yeah. We are transferring the special connector. Yeah.
I'm just letting you know, I'm a friend of Matt, actually. I'm a physician from Canada, and I'm going to be doing a general vegan nutrition talk at 5 o'clock, just in one of the other rooms over there. So this is more focused on sports. Fantastic talk, really. And I'm going to touch on general nutrition, a little bit more broad-based.
Cool, great. We're really fortunate to have so many experts here and stuff to talk about this and get a good picture of overall nutrition and health. Any other questions? Anything pressing? One more? Let's make this the last one here, if we can pass this back again. Thank you.
Where's this going?
Where's Mike?
Here.
I'm registered blind.
There you go.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm registered blind and I was actually a martial artist for almost 20 years and I now do running. I was wanting to know what your basically take was in gluten, because I was told quite a lot of gluten from the wheats and that are meant to be bad for your bones and joints, and what other thing as a vegan could I eat to avoid that and still get basically the basic nutrition that I need? Thanks.
Is that about what to eat beforehand? What to eat before a match? Oh, okay, got it. So avoiding gluten. Yeah, for those who choose to avoid it, there are lots of alternatives, and I think one benefit to the gluten-free fad has been the increase in using these other grains. Quinoa is a good one, brown rice, eating those. These foods can be pretty easily replaced. Now there's even a all-bean pasta, so pasta made from black bean. There's corn pasta. There are a lot of alternatives to gluten, definitely. And I'm glad to see the variety. I think most people can eat gluten, even those who do avoid it, but I think that this interest in it has really spawned this greater variety of foods. So yeah, good question. Cool, well thank you everybody for coming. Enjoy the rest of it, and maybe I'll see you tomorrow at my other talk.